Expediting with Lucy here with more nonsense. Fort Hood, Texas, in central Texas. It's a huge gigantic training base. And every year, the Texas National Guard, 49th Lone Star, would come out and do their training. And we had M1 tanks, and they had M60, which is obsolete technology, but their guard unit, that's kind of what they get stuck with. And we had, at the time, complete and utter disdain for the 49th Lone Star. They're weekend warriors, I get it, and they would go to the field for their 2 weeks, and they'd bring their cars with them, and they'd have clotheslines laid out, which is not, you're only out there for a short period of time, and a handful of them would get killed every summer, like clockwork. They'd get 2 or 3 deaths, and they would have a bunch of people injured, and they'd tear up equipment. One guy was hot dogging and balled up a helicopter right in front of everybody, just hot dogging. And these people always seem to get lost on base because it goes on forever, and they end up having to send out search parties to find people. And it's just, we had a complete and utter disdain for the 49th Lone Star. But they would come out and do the same stuff we would do in the summer. We didn't intermingle with them, but they were there. And as a tanker, we used to go to the simulators and fire rounds. And the tank commander and the gunner would get together, go to the sims, and fire electronically. And then once a year, we would do what's called Tank Table 8, which is where you actually go out to the range and you fire, live ammunition and whatnot. Now, a tank round, this is the original M1, not an A1, A2, A3, whatever it is. M1A nothing, as we call it. Had a 105 millimeter cannon, and a service round, a round you would use in combat. The slug that comes out of it is made of depleted uranium, and it goes through anything. But in training, they use an aluminum slug, which goes through nothing. And the difference is, it costs a fraction of the money to make, and you don't have to put as much charge behind it because the slug weighs so much less, and you're not throwing depleted uranium around, which is radioactive. But in combat, nobody cares. So you get a load of training rounds, which again, they're not quiet. They make a big boom and they send a slug, but the slug won't penetrate a hard target because that's not what it's designed for. And we go out to these ranges. The ranges at Fort Hood go on for miles, and it's, again, I've talked about this in a previous video. You look down at it from above, it's like a wagon wheel, and in the center is this mountain. I don't remember what they called it, but it was the permanent dud zone, and all the spokes of the wheel were aiming in. Now, if you started on this side of the range, of the firing ranges, and you flew over top to the other side, to the other range facing at you, you're probably going 12, 14 miles. I mean, I'm talking, this thing goes on forever. And the way the ranges are set up is you're up at they call the top of the range, you're actually up on a higher ground, and you're looking down the range, which is in a valley, and they put berms. So when you're down in the firing range, you can't see across to the other berm, the other side. You're too low to the ground. And within the berms, they have big fluorescent arrows pointing, from this side and from this side to double remind you this is the range. Well, this range is maybe 100 yards wide at the top, and then it gets bigger as it goes down there. And it's miles, 4 or 5 miles before you get to the mountain. You never go that far. So what happens is you start up here and you drive down into the range and you stop, and then they let you go active, but you have to be down in it. And the deal with a firing range is you'll have a lot of armored vehicles, and you have flags you put up. You have a red flag, green flag, and a yellow flag. And the yellow flag is for malfunctions. I don't think anybody ever used one. If you have ammunition on board your tank, period, you have a red flag up. With a green flag, means you're not firing, but you have ammo. If you're on the firing range actively shooting, you have a red flag. So they're constantly changing flags. It's a safety thing. The National Guard was out there firing the same day we were on the range, right over there. You can see them with their M60s. Between the range, back up here at the top, there is a very crude control tower, which is the range control people, which is our civilian contractors who sit up there and watch for safety, and they're watching frequencies, and they've got big binos to make sure, because it's an open range, and sometimes cattle run around down range and this stuff, and they have to, control this. But they're the range safety guys, called range control. Now, when you're in a tank and you have your headset on, you have a switch. You can either flip it back and talk amongst yourselves, or you can flip it forward and it transmits. There's 2 plugs you put in the wall, and it's real obvious which way they go, but at some point, some idiot put them in upside down. It's impossible to do. They did it anyway. And they discovered that if you flip them over, your voice transmits constantly. In the Army trains standardization, they want everybody doing the exact same thing the exact same way, which in combat is a really good idea, because you're going to take casualties, and you don't want to pull a loader from this crew over here and stick it in this tank to find out they do everything a different way, and he has to learn on the job. If we all do the exact same thing, you can switch and mix and match. And I found out, surprisingly, that is not normal in some militaries at all. It's strange. So part of the scoring you get graded on the range, and everybody's fighting for the highest score, is because you're transmitting down there. They also grade you on what you say and how you say it. So obviously we had a pretty elaborate way of doing sign language and gang signs and stuff. We wanted to say something without saying it. It's part of the game. So you get up to the top, you take on your ammo, and when you're at the top of the range, the fastest you can drive the tank is walking speed, because literally somebody walks in front of you, and that's how fast you go. The range is over here, your gun is up in the air. If your tank's going this way, your gun's up in the air. You'll always have the gun up and down range when you have ammunition on board. When you park it, the gun's up and down range. So one crew got loaded up. They were first in line, and they're going over, walking me out of ground guide, going to walking speed up and down range. And he turns, and he goes down into the range, and he spins his gun around, and now he's down pointed, and he's within the range. And they do some of they call them engagements. Some of the engagements, you're stationary, and behind a berm, you pop up and fire and come down, and some you're driving, and you shoot on the move, and you kind of go through stages. These guys fired a couple of rounds, and then they stopped, and they were having a problem, I think, with one of the targets downrange. And range control said, hold on a second, they're pushing buttons, because it makes targets pop up and they run, and you gotta shoot them when they're moving and stuff. And it's primitive stuff. And so we're all sitting around, and we're at the top of the range. Now they're grading them what they're saying. So we're sitting up on some bleachers, and we're just kind of bummed out, looking around. And there's a big old PA speaker in front of us, like one you saw on MASH. And you can hear the conversation of the crew. They just go, "What's going on? Hey, what's how you like your new car?" They're talking about nothing. And they're down there with their red and green flag, because again, they're not shooting, so they put a green flag up just to let, if there's anybody driving down there to work on it, it's the nature of the beast. And we're sitting up there, and we hear, boom, tank cannon goes off, and the rounds that come out of the tank cannon have what's called a tracer tip. They paint them so you can actually see them. You can watch the track of the round. So we're looking over here, and we see a tank round come flying from over here and sail over top of their tank. And everybody does this. And there is a National Guard tank at the top of the range, gun tube down, pointed at our range, down in our bathtub. And he just fired a round across the range. And he's 150 yards that way, maybe 200 yards from us. And we all look, and there's like dead silence. Like, did that just happen? And the tank commander starts yelling down there. "What in the hell?" And they start screaming. And then the range control guy, I don't know if he heard it or saw it or what, but he yells on the radio. We all heard it. He yells, "Ceasefire all ranges, ceasefire all ranges." Boom! There goes the second round, and it misses the top of the tank by maybe a foot. And they start screaming on the radio, "Ceasefire, ceasefire!" And I can hear the crew down there, and the driver, Curry. Curry goes, "Hey, what's going on up there?" And he goes, back it up real quick." And then he tells the gunner, hold the gun, which means you power these controls called Cadillacs. You hold the Cadillacs, so when the tank turns around, the gun stays downrange. He goes, hold the gun. And he turns around, he says, "Get up range, go, kick it." He says, "Kick in the ass." That means just get after it. So he starts hauling ass up range, and the driver's going, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they're quiet, and here they come, and that tank over there, that tank on that range over there, is following them with their cannon. And we're like, does nobody know what's going on here? And it's quiet in the tank, and the tank commander, I don't remember his name, but he said those immortal words: if that blankety blank shoots at me one more, boom, there goes the third round, and it sails wide. He misses it to the rear. We watch it, and he says to the loader, he says, "Get that blankety blank green flag down." And he reaches up, and we're on our feet going, "Oh, this is about to get good." And he pulls that green flag, and the tank commander grabs the tank, spins the cannon around, calls out a professional and proper fire command on the National Guard tank, and the gunner lit him up. Booyah! And this aluminum slug sailed up range, hit the turret, and bounced and made this screeching sound as it went off into the sky. Now, the round's not going to go through the tank, but I promise you they knew the round hit them, and that got their attention because that tank, the ground guide only tank, hit the top of the range going approximately 55 or 60 miles an hour, did a power slide, and drove over on their range with the gun loaded, drove up to the tank with the gun tube pointed directly at it, and the E6, I think it was an E6, got out and proceeded to cuss out everybody in that unit from the lieutenant colonel on down, because we raced over there in vehicles, and our lieutenant colonel just stood back and smiled, and he cussed out their lieutenant colonel and everybody in it. And don't you come on this range ever again. If I see one of your tanks, I'm going to engage it. As soon as I see an M60, I'm going to, I mean, this guy was livid. It's kind of fun to watch, though. And they shut the range down. They had this big, the whole firing areas of all the ranges were shut down, big safety stand down, big investigations, and da-da-da-da-da. It was insane. That was fun to witness. I just remember standing on the bleachers, we're all going, oh, this is going to be interesting. You know, we're going to watch a tank battle happen right in front of us. More stupidity. Like I said, I got lots of these. All right, that's Expediting with Lucy. I'm out.